another session of Spring Security, and in this session I'm going to show you how Spring Security internally works. So if you stay along with me till the end of this session, I'm sure that you will be able to understand how the filters are actually implemented using Spring Security, and how you can probably also implement your own custom filter and plug it within the Spring Security framework. So to start with, how Spring Security works. So Spring Security basically consists of a list of filters, at least some 13 filters, anything between 13 to 20 filters, and the list of filters are also configurable, and this list of filters are applied one after the another on any incoming request. And here in this diagram I have shown some of the most important filters like the CORS filter, CSRF filter, basic authentication filter, then logout and exception translation filter, and authorization filter. These are just some of the few filters. There are many others as well. So these filters, actually each of these filters implements certain functionality, which we will see later. Now, before we even start, how do you know what are the filters which are being applied to your incoming request? So whenever you start working with Spring Security in a Spring Boot application, just to understand the internal working of Spring Security in development environment, what you should do is you should enable trace logging of Spring Security using this specific configuration in your application YAML. So if you enable trace logging, then when Spring Boot starts, then it will print the list of filters it will apply, and also if there are different list of filters applied to different requests, which we will also see, they will also be printed in the log whenever you are invoking any particular request. So what are these filters? So these filters are basically our normal servlet filters, but they are injected or they are placed within the Spring context, which means that they are also able to utilize the full capability of the Spring context or the Spring application container. And most of these filters actually implement this once per request filter, which again is a filter within the Spring Security framework. And this once per request filter has the logic to ensure that for every single request, a specific filter is only applied once and not twice. And second is, some filters block the request, like say for example CSRF filter or CORS filter. If they are applied and if the check fails, then they will block the request and they will not let the request to proceed to the next filter. While there are some other filters which will not block the request in case the filter is not, in case the filter's logic has not been applied or could not be applied, they will not block the sequence of invocation. So there are examples of such filters like the authentication filters. For the authentication filters, they first check some criteria. If the criteria is not applicable, which means that authentication is not applicable, then they simply let the request go to the next filter in the chain. So they do not block the request. And the applied list of filters is dictated by the default filter chain, which we will also see, and of course, which you can override, which we have also seen in the other videos of this series. Like if you configure security filter chain bin in your web security config, then you can actually override the filters. So with that said, let us see an example of one of the most important or one of the basic filters, which is the basic authentication filter, which is there within the Spring Security framework. And let us try to understand at a high level how this filter is implemented. But before we go there, what does the basic authentication filter does? The basic authentication filter first tries to find out if there is a HTTP basic header, and you know that the HTTP basic header can be supplied with the key, can be supplied with an HTTP header. The HTTP header's key should be authorization and the value should be bearer and then space and then the username and the password encoded into base64. So the purpose of the basic authentication filter is to extract the HTTP basic header and then to authenticate against the authentication mechanism. So if you look at the code, what this code does is this first tries to do an authentication converter.convert, and what this particular method does internally is it actually detects whether there is an HTTP basic filter. Whether there is an HTTP basic header. So if there is no HTTP basic header found, which means there is no authorization header key in the HTTP request, then it simply logs this in the trace that did not process authentication request because it does not contain a valid HTTP basic header, and then it does a chain.do filter, which means it then basically passes the control to the next filter in the chain, which means it does not block the request. So again, this basic authentication filter extracts the username and the password from that HTTP basic header, provided the HTTP basic header is present. And if it is present, then it goes to actually authenticate the header, basically authenticate the credentials against the authentication manager, which can be a database based or LDAP based and many other kinds of authentication, but that's a different story. So, but if it is unable to find that out, then it basically lets the control pass to the next filter in the filter chain. So it's not a blocking filter. So with that said, let us see a quick demo where I will show you how the list of filters can also vary based on the type of request. So let us start with the demo. And in order to get the code base for this demo, please go to my GitHub branch, and the link is provided in the description. So please go to the description and find out the GitHub branch. And also, this is the branch Springboot Basic Security 3. So this is the branch, and clone the repo and do a maven clean package to create the jar and then run the jar. And I have done that. I have actually started it already to actually save some precious time during the demo and to show you the most important parts in the demo. So let me go and show you what I have done here. Here, what I have done is I have added the Spring Boot along with Spring Boot Starter Security, which you have seen in my previous videos. I have added one more thing, which is Spring Boot Starter OAuth 2 client. So the Spring Boot Starter OAuth 2 client is another gem in the Spring security, which helps you to do OAuth, which means social login via Google or Facebook or whatsoever. So, but that's not the topic of this video. We are simply going to see that the list of filters being applied can also vary based on what you have configured. So let us first see what is the default list of filters which is applied. So what I'm first going to do is I'm first going to run this configuration. So with the OAuth 2 client, let me also show you the web security config. In the web security config, I have also configured, along with HTTP basic, I have also configured OAuth 2 login, and this OAuth 2 login does require that I need to also configure the OAuth 2 credentials. These are just for the time being. You do not need to remember anything here because I will create separate videos for OAuth authentication. This is just a skeleton setup of OAuth authentication to show you that the list of filters can actually vary. So let me make that request once again. So here is the server running. Here is the Spring Boot server running, and following the README, you can make another request to the server. So I'm actually again invoking that endpoint API /1/private with the specific header, and I will get the message. But now let me show you what are the filters which have been applied. So you can see there were 18 filters, 18 out of 18. So in total, there were 18 filters which were applied to every single request. So the filter starts with this one, disable encoding URL filter, and then this one, then this one, and then CORS and CSRF filter, then logout filter, then OAuth, then two filters specific to OAuth to request. See, the important thing here is it did not match the request pattern for the OAuth. So these OAuth filters were not applicable, and hence the control was passed to the next filter. Very similar to the basic filter which we have already seen. So then it invokes this filter. Again, it did not match the request pattern for the username password authentication filter. So that is why it let the control go to the next filter. The next filter, again, it did not actually match the expectation of any of the filters, and those filters were not blocking, and that is why the control came to the next filter, and then the control came to this basic authentication filter. And this is where you can see the logging from the basic authentication filter, where it found the username in the header, and then it actually verified the username and the credential, and then created the security context which contains the credential of the authenticated user. And then the remaining filters were applied before finally the call was the call was delegated to the controller. So this list of 18 filters were applied. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically comment out the OAuth part and show you what is the list of filters that will be applied then. So I'm going to comment these things. Sorry, first the application YAML here. I will do a comment. I'll comment them, and then I will go here. I will comment this. And also in the web security config, I will comment the OAuth to login. And I will again do a Maven clean package and read on, and then you will see that the list of filters will reduce, because now I will remove the OAuth to login, and hence the list of filters will be reduced. So the list of filters can absolutely vary based on the request. So I have recompiled and now restarting the program, and then I'm going to make the same request once again and see how many filters have been applied. See, now 16 filters. The list of filters has reduced. So that's what I wanted to show you in this video with just a single demo. What are the different filters and how the list of filters can absolutely vary based on your configuration, because whenever you configure a security filter chain, then it actually overrides the default security filter chain which is there within the Spring Security Framework. So that's it more or less, and I hope you have got some value from within this demo, and if you did, and if you are still looking for more interesting videos on Spring Security, on Spring Boot, Java and related topics, then consider subscribing to my channel and also share it with others who also might benefit. And please also share your feedback by commenting. Thank you very much and have a nice day.